Okay, we'll make a start for those people who have just joined the webinar. So thank you everybody for joining. We've got a very interesting and relevant topic today. Just a few points before we start. We will aim to go no later than 3 o'clock. Hopefully that you can all stay for the full session, because we're hoping it gets quite interactive after about 20 minutes. Could I just ask a couple of things? If you could turn off your video and sound for now, that would be good, just so that we don't get any disruptions to the presentation. And then when we get to the more interactive session, as and when, you can turn the video and sound on. If you can see Ivan on the webinar, if you know how to pin him, because he's going to be sharing his screen. So the 3 dots on his picture, if you just click on that, if you pin him, then he'll become the main picture on your screen. For those of you who don't know me and haven't joined these webinars before, my name is Emma Beesley, and I work with EmiratesHR. I manage a lot of the external relationships that we have with in an aim to support the regional HR community. So that's my focus. EmiratesHR is a HR platform that's designed specifically for this part of the world. I was a former client of EmiratesHR, so I can vouch for the value that the platform brings to HR and people development. Recently, we've launched the HR Forum, which most of you will have seen, because your registration for this webinar would have been done through that. So what we're trying to achieve from that is to have a central point where HR professionals, business owners, employees can go there and find very current, relevant information that can help them as employees or their businesses to just be doing a lot more in terms of best practice, looking at processes, looking at how we can make HR better for people and to support businesses. Now, one of the current topics that's got a lot of attention in the forum is the future of learning in organizations. So with a lot of the changes that have happened over the last 6 or 7 months, how can we adapt? How can organizations adapt? What can be done? What is the future looking like? So we're very fortunate to have Ivan and Elena from the company that they both co-founded, called Bessern. I don't know if I've pronounced that right. I think so. I'll get corrected if not. They're going to delve into some detail today on the future of corporate learning. So the way it's going to go, they're going to start with introducing themselves, and then go through a presentation, and then be encouraging questions from everybody. So I'm hoping that we're going to have lots of questions and quite an interactive audience today. So I'll stop talking now. I'll hand you over to our presenters, and we'll take it from there. Okay? So over to you two.
Thank you, Emma. Hi, everyone. Before we introduce ourselves, let me tell you a little bit about what we're here to do today. So nurturing and grooming talent in company today, especially, is a concern for many leaders. So this traditional training approach is not delivered fast enough to keep up with the pace of business transformations, particularly with what has happened recently. Within the last 5 years, in fact, the way that people learn has drastically changed. Now it's all about these convenient, individualist, practical, bite-sized knowledge pieces. I mean, think of just the last thing you searched on YouTube. So traditional people development essentially is being challenged due to the increased understanding of the fact that training employees with learning long and defined curricula is simply not in line with the agile organizational objectives. So some of the things we're going to cover today is how tech and neuroscience are going to affect and already affecting the future of learning and development. We're going to look at how people learn across different generations and what better to ignite essentially that agility and transformation within their organizations. And we'll share with you some tools and resources that you can use in your work to rethink how you approach learning and development. And before we go into the meat of the conversation, let us tell you a little bit about ourselves. So myself, I'm Elena Agaragimova. I come from higher education academia background. Actually, in recent years, over the last 7 years that I've been in the UAE, I've transitioned towards learning and development, which was sort of a hobby that turned into a career. About 1.5 years ago, I had the pleasure to join Ivan, and we have co-founded Bessern. And This is something we feel really strongly about how we learn and applying different kind of learning in a way that actually works for people. And it came from our own experiences of struggles and in terms of, you know, some of the frustrations we have in the workplace. So we say, why not create something and offer some solutions to some of these challenges? We are active in the region as well, so we speak on various webinars. We contribute to different platforms such as Forbes Middle East, Entrepreneur Magazine, Arabian Business, and various other publications. So we produce quite a bit of content. So if you see us on social media, now you get to see us face to face here as well. So it's good to be with you guys today.
Hello, everybody. So my name is Ivan. I've been actually working on your side in the corporate world for close to 18 years. My last role was as director of commercial strategy, where in fact, one of the things that I had to do is to have a huge budget in order to develop accelerated development of people. And during this journey of talent development, this is where I had the big question that came to my mind, because I have a background of engineering, so numbers should speak to me. And it was almost impossible to quantify how much, in fact, was the return on investment that we were putting in terms of money for the development of people. It was impossible to say how many people have not only acquired knowledge, but actually is practicing what they do. And this is where, as Elena mentioned, we joined forces in order to find a good solution, a sustainable solution and affordable for organizations in order to make people that learns and apply what they learn, because ultimately your budgets in training and developments are made for that. So I'm happy to be with you today.
All right, so to give some context, we need to talk a bit about science. So our brain essentially works around three functions. We have the cognitive, which is process knowledge, right? We have emotions in our sensory motor, and the way it reacts through signals like chemical and electrical. So these signals essentially are the ones that are driving our motivation, decision-making, preferences, etc. So when our brain detects change, like any kind of change, so imagine learning something new in a corporate learning environment. When it detects something, it sends out these strong signals that say something is not right. And these signals really are the ones that sort of can either drive us to learn something or make us hesitant to learn something. So what I want you to get away from this particular comment is that our brain looks at change as a fear. So it's something it's something that is going to disturb the way we normally do things. So when we're looking to creating behavioral changes, when we're looking to learning something new, let's say when you're learning soft skills in an organization, our brain will react negatively perhaps if the learning and the behavior change is not implemented in the right way. And unfortunately, this is exactly what organizations do today. So what we're doing in organizations is we're putting people in, 1 or 2 or 3 day training, right? Pre-COVID at least. And now we still see companies do this online as well, surprisingly. I'm still astonished where companies still request 4, 5, 6 hour online trainings today. It's like we took the offline training to online when the offline didn't work to begin with. So why did we take it online in such large sort of information-packed sessions? Our brain simply doesn't respond to that. So the whole idea of you put somebody in the room for 2-3 days and they're gonna walk away and learn something is unrealistic, because our brain does not process change, does not process new information in this way. And at the end of the day, as Yvonne mentioned, it's very difficult to track the ROI, because the only really kind of tick the box that we do with the corporate trainings is we're saying, did we like the trainer? It's like a popularity contest. If the trainer was good, gave it good marks, wonderful, we done our jobs. But people didn't learn, change didn't happen, organizations didn't benefit, individuals didn't benefit. So it's more of a nice thing to do to get people out of the office, to get people out of regular working environment. So this is where we really need to understand a little bit about neuroscience, about behavioral. How does behavior change happen? Just think of the last time you wanted to make a change in your life, and anything small or big. It's very difficult. So by putting people in the room 2-3 days, we're expecting them to walk away with this new knowledge. It's unrealistic and it doesn't work that way. So to create real change, we really need to create learning journeys in a way that actually sticks, in a way that actually works. Because again, when it comes to our brains and how we perceive information, 95% of actions are unconscious, meaning that they're on autopilot. And to sort of plug into that unconscious and to make that change, we need to trick our brain into a different way of learning, which is not what we're doing today in corporations.
Elena, what I want to share, in fact, there is 3 parts about the next 3 slides that are going to be interesting for the audience. One of them is that I'm going to cover in this slide about how the brain actually learns. The second part is going to be about what people claims is the best way to learn, what the average employee claims that is the best way that they could adopt learning and apply it. And the third part is going to be about if we want people to learn, it goes beyond just skills and behaviors that needs to be replicated. Nowadays, checking into the psychological resources of people, this story about the growth mindset, mindfulness, that everybody talks about it, having the possibility to have psychological resources is so important so that people are motivated and converted and actually practice the new learning. And these are the 3 things that are going to guide us through our discussion. First of all, let's focus on that. So I am sorry if I'm going to use still a little bit like some science-based words, but certain areas are important in order to understand how the brain works. So the brain learns best when an experience engages in an area called the hippocampus. When Elena was saying the subconscious, and this is the place where we go into autopilot, this is the area, in fact, inside there is a specific area called the hippocampus, a region of the brain that's active when new information is embedded into the long-term memory. It's all of the rituals that we have learned during our lives. Since the age of 7 months old, our brain is constantly storing information, rules of society, about if we are good or not. All this is stored, except that it's difficult to access when it's required. 95% of our brain is this subconscious. So the hippocampus activates when there is 4 conditions that are met when we are learning. So attention, generation, emotions, and spacing. Let me tell you a little bit more about what it is, each of the 4 conditions. So attention. Learners should not be asked to pay attention to any one thing for longer than 15 or 20 minutes. So research shows that if you go after the 20 minutes of sustained attention, trainers should either give learners a break to allow this specific area to recharge, or they should potentially switch tasks, giving the learners the opportunity to reflect, ask questions, discuss, or do a classroom exercise. Key takeaway, 15 or 20 minutes of sustained attention is what the brain can handle. After that, we forget everything that was said. The second area is about generation. Generation is the process of creating your own connections to new ideas, connecting new ideas to social thoughts and social interaction, explaining others. What does it mean is that if you are going to want and store something in the subconscious, you need to be able to create pathways between your neurons in order that this information is stored in your subconscious. So it's continuous repetition or extrapolation of the learnings to new situations that will actually make that you record a new information in your subconscious. The third part is about emotions. It's no coincidence that some of the most emotional moments of our life seem like unforgettable. So how do you design a learning program that arouses a moderate level of emotions? So usually what we do is to maximize novelty, a little bit of entertainment and positive anticipation. Positive anticipation is a principle of positive psychology where we are incorporating rewarding social experience in which learners can connect with other people, that we recognize positively the efforts of people who are participating to the learning. The last point or last condition to make learning stick is spacing. Studies show that single session trainings yield very little long-term retention. Even when satisfaction ratings are high, memory encoding works best when rather than passively they are reviewing the material they have already learned. You instead test their memory. You are challenging yourself. And this is a need for retrieving information again and again. So exciting the audience in order to retrieve information that they have learned. So takeaway is that in order to do learning stick, there are 4 conditions that are matching how the brain actually works. Now, neuroscience as such, if we look 10 years ago, there was nothing at all about how you can apply it to learning. Only in the last 5 years, it has been massified in order to understand what areas of the brain are actually reacting in order to have not only acquisition of learning, retention, but also motivation for people in order to act with the learnings. And this is what we are trying to say, is that in order that learning to stick, it needs to be mapped around how the brain works. So, and I wanted to tell you a little bit more about what is the perspective from people in the organizations in terms of how they should be learning. And we call it the model learner, but the model learner don't think about a Gen Z guy or a millennial. Think about a person like me, in fact. How do I learn today, regardless that I'm 40 years old? How do I go and look for information? What is the best way that I would prefer to learn instead of being in a training area? There was a research, and for that we need to look at this beautiful graphic. If you look at the horizontal area, you have, in fact, the area of how people are wanting to learn, and the vertical area is how they want to learn, and the horizontal area is the one that is heavily used in organizations. So what we are saying is, if we look at the top left area of this graphic, is what people are requiring, and we are not doing enough in organization, is all of these orange dots. So people want to have personalized knowledge, coaching from external mentors, on demand. Whenever they require the information, they need to have access to that information. If the training happened 1 year ago, there is no way that I'm going to search for my papers or my printouts or my PDF that I saved in a weird folder and retrieve it in order to check. They want to have long-term assignments, and they want to have mobile device-based information because they want to access it at any time. They don't need to be in front of the computer. There are other things that we use a lot in trainings, but they are less relevant. So what people are saying is that we want to have convenience. We want to have the possibility to have personalized discussions. And you will tell me, Ivan, this is super expensive. Having a team of coaches supporting me, having a learning management system that is going to be on all the time, it is an investment for the company. What I will tell you a little bit later is that we are not talking anymore about having individual coaching sessions. We are not talking anymore about having e-learning in place. What we want to do is to match the current behaviors that employees are having today. They are overwhelmed with a lot of information. They are 33% of the time they are spending on the meetings. They prefer to have a learning path that is embedded with their job, in fact. They don't want to have a 1-year training, only if they want to have free time or holidays, as Elena mentioned just before, that certain of the employees prefer to have a time off through trainings, which is not really the purpose of the investment of any company. And the last point is that the modern learner prefers to learn in a more interactive using technology in order that is matching, in fact, the current actions that he does in the day-to-day. The third point that, if I can click in this presentation, is about the psychological resources that is beyond behaviors and skills. Elena, what can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes. So when it comes to learning, like right now, when companies are implementing different trainings, they focus a lot on skill set, right? And we forget this big part, which is the psychological resources that we need to start incorporating. We don't do it in depth enough at the moment, and this is where the magic is essentially. So I'm just going to pick a couple of these. You have all of them here in front of you. So we need to look at the development of individual as a whole person. Basically, we cannot just focus on specific skill. We need to really create the behavioral, the skills, and the psychological resources all together. That is how change happens. That is how we learn. That is how we become the best versions of ourselves in the workplace, which then benefits the company, right? For example, we need to look at topics, really understanding, like, for example, I'll pick a couple from these. So let's look at relationships and trust climate at work. So what we're talking about here is not just necessarily that effective communication, which is such a popular topic these days, right? How do you effectively communicate? If there's no trust within a company, no matter how effectively you communicate, no matter how many effective communication courses you take, it's not going to go anywhere. So, and this brings another point, is that when I get requests to do corporate trainings, and at this point I've trained probably thousands of individuals just in the last, over 1,000 to be specific, just in the last year and a half. And what I can tell you is that when companies hire me to do trainings on emotional intelligence, and then they're missing big pieces like, is your senior leadership creating a psychologically safe environment? Do you have that trust climate in a company? Because I can teach your mid-level managers or give them some guidance about ways they can increase their emotional intelligence. But if they're afraid to speak up in an organization, what are we doing? You want to pay me? We want to spend some money? Fine, but no change is going to happen in your organization. So I think as leadership and learning and development, we need to be realistic. Like, are we just trying to spend money, or are we trying to make an impact on our organization? Number two, for example, focus and flow. When it comes to being productive or time management, this is still one of the most popular requested topics that companies want. Yet we don't focus topics such as flow, which is really understanding how do you get focused on a task? How do you create that atmosphere, that environment in a world where we're continuously distracted by so many things, especially when working from home? Time management is not going to help you there. Finding that flow and focus is what's going to help you there. That's what we need. That's the psychological aspect of it. Not just, can I book this in my calendar and make sure that I, time myself? No, it's not that simple. So, because again, the 95% of everything that we do, our actions, behaviors, communication, is subconscious. It's been developed over however old you are, it's been developed. So we cannot possibly change it by just giving people a few resources here and there, or giving them some presentation. It needs to be much deeper than that, and needs to go into psychological resources. And another final one, I'll just give a final one on this slide, is coaching and encouraging ownership, for example. So when we're talking about coaching, like if we're not talking about maybe even an external coach coming in, but let's say internally, you have leaders in organizations. If you're a leader in an organization today and you don't have the skill set to coach and mentor your team, you're probably missing out on a great opportunity to then empower that ownership. And another fact that is very obvious in many cases and in corporations, and this part of the world, at least this is what I can speak to, is that a lot of the management don't have the emotional intelligence and the coaching skills to be able to drive and motivate and inspire their employees, or helping them to reach their potential, because they don't have the skill set of coaching. I don't mean to go and do the ICF, and no, I just mean to have basic understanding of what does it mean to develop a team member. That's what leadership is about. We have a lot of managers, we don't have a lot of leaders in organizations. So coaching really needs to be part of the whole package, because at the end of the day, we all need support, we all have blind spots, and at the end of the day, You can learn anything online. It's that live interaction and that support when you need it the most is what's going to make you actually implement and learn something new.
Elena, I love what you said, because when we look at the path that we have discussed, so we are talking now about that beyond just the behaviors that people learn through a standard or traditional training. If you want people to be motivated, to have the motivation to apply the learnings, to apply new behaviors, to create a new culture, you need to have this sense of purpose, the possibility to master the new skills that you have acquired. And by master, we say deciding how you are going to be implemented, and you have to create the sense of accountability. These three things are often outside of the scope of any training. So what happens with the trainings is that the maximum that you can acquire is, I know what it's about, but I don't care about applying it, because there is nothing specific for me as an employee, or a real motivation or a real encouragement to or reward that in order to apply it, because I will be paid tomorrow the same if I apply it or not. That's the sad reality about what trainings are all about today. I wanted to recap a little bit more on what we have seen. So in order that it becomes clear, how can we use the learnings from neuroscience on how the brain works into actual change for our organization in terms of our training strategy. So first of all, the future or the actual current trend is about microlearning and hybrid. Microlearning, it means it is short and engaged. It does not mean e-learnings. An e-learning that has a 1 hour duration doesn't help anyone. And most often, and that includes me because I have done it, I will go and click without listening what is said. Microlearning is, imagine that the videos that you watch in YouTube, maximum 15 to 20 minutes. Or imagine the short videos of 1 to 2 minutes in Instagram. Powerful, there is a small notch of information. And hybrid, because you have to do an action after that, after you watch that video. And hybrid, because you need to have the support of someone who will be on demand, helping the employee to apply what he has learned. Now, the other thing is accessibility when it's required. Mobile-first solutions are something that is highly in demand today in order to be capable of learning or when we need it. And the funny thing is that sometimes we don't need the information when we are at work, physically in the office or now at home, but there are moments where we are reflecting about, hey, I needed to do this or I need to do this tomorrow. How can I do it? And it can be 8 o'clock in the evening, it can be 7 o'clock in the morning. So whenever it's required to have the accessibility of the information. The other thing is about change. Behaviors that are changing need two things: motivation. This is the psychological resources to move forward and to continuously learn. And the other thing is about having triggers to implement small little actions. You don't expect that someone, after a 3 days training about managerial skills, he has become already equipped to drive a team. So what you need to do is to have a small reinforcements or cues to remember and apply with the small little actions. So when they have a chunk of training, they need to have the possibility to create a small habit that they will do repetitively, so that the brain acquires this knowledge and create automatic reflexes. So this is what we mean, continuous reinforcement. So spacing out learning sessions over several days. So instead of having these 3 days managerial skills handbook to read and to practice and so on, and where I approximately 2 months after I will remember only 5 to 10% of what it was said, you need to have a strategy where learnings are spaced out. It is 1 to 2 hours maximum specifically online today, where in between sessions, people are practicing what they learn with small actions, small trackers of what they need to do, and they have accessibility to someone to answer that question if required. So what we're saying is that we need to have this ecosystem for habit creation. You teach them how to learn, but you also teach them how to apply it through small habits. And the last point to consider is the methodology with positive reinforcement. So when people is successful to start engaging and practicing their habits, that they are capable of receiving a positive reinforcement. Yes, you are doing good. The act of positive reinforcement generates, in fact, the willingness to go further. These systems today, this ecosystem that we were mentioning, it doesn't need a huge investment. It doesn't need a full learning management system that where you're going to spend $1 million with a SAP to have something that is not the best user-friendly system. It is more focused on the methodology and the possibility to have just a tech platform where people can interact, log in when they need it, have access to the information, talk with a coach whenever it's required, have Zoom sessions with a facilitator. The investment is nothing extra, in fact, is required. And this is where the concept of agile learning comes to place. Agile learning is a methodology that was learned from tech companies where they apply it in order to develop products. In marketing, for instance, I used to apply it quite a lot in order to understand the focus with consumers through design thinking. It was a methodology where there was continuous iterations. Instead of having a product that is completely, how do you call it, analyzed, beautiful, and that nobody needs, you do iterations of products that are simple, ugly looking, but it works, it satisfies the main needs of the customers. So the concept of agile method learning has already been in the market for close to 3 years. And it's about that of having small little chunks of learnings, making them practice, and base the next session on the results of the practice or the learnings from the previous session. Is continuous iteration based on data. So you see what is the level of acquisition, you see what is the level of engagement of your participants, and you create the content little by little. Instead of having a full curricula that it will take you like 3 months to finalize, what you do is you do continuous improvement of the initial learning bit that you are providing to people. And this methodology of learning, agile learning, now is heavily used in the US and Europe. And by the way, this is how ourselves we got to learn it, in fact, because it's a mix of neuroscience with a practice that is well known in technology. And in the Middle East, funny enough, there is a good reception of this methodology, because the big question is that we were looking at a KPMG research not so long time ago. It was like 3 weeks or 2 weeks ago, where in fact the top risk that people are seeing during the COVID time is talent development. When you ask the CEOs, what is the top risk for your company during COVID, they have put it in the top, talent development. What people have realized is that during COVID time, we leaders haven't got enough resources in order to move forward with encouraging their organization or to adapt to the volatility of the situation. And this is how, little by little, the implementation of the agile learning methodology has become something at hand in order to provide quickly a solution in order to close the gaps in the leadership. So this is it for what I wanted to share with you.
So what we'd ideally like to do now, thank you, that was very interesting. I'm sure everybody's found that very insightful. What we're hoping is that people have got either some contributions to add to that or some questions. So we open it up for questions. If we get stumped, I've always got lots of questions. So if anybody does have anything they want to ask or to add here, just unmute yourselves. Feel free to do that, please.
I like the comment of Imran regarding the microlearning. It's becoming very popular. So instead of developing full-fledged e-learnings that are very long and sometimes very boring for participants, this is something microlearning it has become a boom, and it's quite easy to implement it. In fact, the crazy thing is that it can be done even in-house for our corporations.
I have a question. So if a lot of what you've explained now may be new for some people that are listening, or it may be packaged in a slightly different way to what they've been familiar to, and it might make them feel like they want to make a change within their organizations in the areas of training if they are empowered to do so. But do you think this is a good time for them to be making that kind of change, given the situation, the current level of uncertainty, the ways of working being different? Is this a good time to make changes to the way that people are managing training within their organizations?
Emma, I'm not going to lie to you. Most of the corporations have reduced heavily their investment in learning and development. Now, what happens is that they have done the cut in the times where employees needed the most specifically skills about how to manage stress, how to manage uncertainty. What we don't always recognize is that this psychological or the mental health is also having an impact in the productivity of people. So we find ourselves at home and not being capable of produce as much as we are capable of, because we are very worried and we are mentally not there. So it is what I have noticed is that people that have not correctly allocated their training budget is that they are finding themselves with a reduced productivity, with higher numbers of mental health issues regarding anxiety and stress at work. Now, this is the time where we should ask ourselves, if we have very little budget, what creative ways do we do in order to help the organization to develop? And this is the best time, in fact, when there is a lot of uncertainty and it becomes chaotic, and even leaders cannot handle anymore, that cannot get hand of their organization in the correct way, to rethink. It gives us an opportunity to rethink, in fact, the way we are doing things. Fortunately enough, there is organizations that are thinking about it, that have implemented new ways of programs, and they have realized also that using new ways of learning, in fact, it is not a higher investment versus before. In fact, for some of them, it might be lower, because the time that you spend creating full curricula of 5 or 6 days is, you pay for it as an organization. You don't have to do that. You just have to focus in small little pieces of information that needs to be communicated into the right way with the right psychological support for your organization in order that they implement it and start measuring results. Because before, you were just throwing 10,000 dirhams to an organization to have communication skills, but you don't have any proof that things were happening, in fact, that things were applied.
So you actually see this as an opportune time rather than a time of what could potentially, I guess some people may view it as a risk. You see it as an opportunity to make those changes.
Absolutely. It's not me who sees it as an opportunity. It's organizations that are forward-looking who sees it as a good opportunity to rethink how to use the best their money.
Yeah, I think just, I mean, in my previous roles, there would always been a reservation within organizations about making that change happen, you know, because a lot of people, I think, will be fixed on the more standard way of learning and the expectation that you've got to, you know, read all these books and attend these programs. How do you help organizations to sort of transition to a more agile learning approach?
Elena, you want to take it or I take it?
Go ahead, I'll add to it.
Yes, okay. Listen, in order to understand the principles of the Agile organization, in fact, in a lot of corporations, they are already applying the Agile methodology for marketing, for product development. So what is happening is not all of the organization, all the functions are aware about what it means to be Agile. What does it mean to have cycles of doing small bits of features that you are launching continuously, testing, seeing if it works, and start the cycle again and progress from there. So, in fact, to start, the principles are easy to understand. In the case of our practice, we spend half a day introducing this methodology with corporations, and the rest is pure work. So it's not like a big thing. It's just about a matter of perspective that is focused more on the needs or pains of the employees, rather than saying, oh, we need to have this curricula for the next 10 years. Do you know, for instance, that in the average of the managerial skills training is 20 years. It lasts 20 years and has never been changed during 20 years. Can you imagine how much the evolution of generations has changed? And this is the thing that they touch the least because it's so precious in corporations. Okay. It is quite easy to start the implementation of the Agile methodology.
Okay. And I think if I may add to it, I think at the end of the day, you know, it's the companies that are making these sort of changes, especially in these times, and we've seen this over and over again in previous, right? So you either adapt or you sort of die down. And I think most important thing to remember is that good talent is difficult to find, very difficult to find, and good talent is even more difficult to keep and maintain. So companies that are just kind of letting it go right now and not really looking for different ways, I guarantee you, especially as the market that's going more now global, so individuals are realizing, actually, I don't really need to be working for this company or this company. I can be a contractor, I can work on my own, or I don't know, I can be in any part of the world. So this traditional corporate role is becoming less and less attractive, particularly for the new generations coming up. So if you're not tailoring your organization with the necessary changes it needs to go through, you're going to hurt in the probably in the shorter term than longer term, because COVID has like accelerated what we need to be doing by 10 years. So everything that was already in the pipeline, it accelerated it, including our need to change. So it's, you know, just look at it as it's a choice we have to make as organizations, as leaders. We either change and adapt, or we suffer the consequences, which are going to be much more painful than going through this change.
So if I give you a time frame of sort of 3 to 5 years, how do you see that corporate learning will evolve through that period of time?
This technology is going to at a fast pace, but where there was the biggest change today in the last five years, it was more in the area of neuroscience, on how people really learn. And now technology is allowing us to predict the needs. So the predictability of the needs of people will make it easier to say, to push the right information or the right activity for employees in order to learn what is required. So instead of going to a full curricula that you don't really care and is not necessary for your role to just right now, you will have this push of information based on the information of what is your current role, what are you working on, and what is your learning style, so that you can have this information coming a little bit like the Google advertising, that based on your research, you have a proposal of what it needs to be done. Artificial intelligence and machine learning are right now in the right level to predict what you will need to learn to do your job, and to measure the impact of what you have learned. This is something also that in our practice we are working, because we are also a tech startup. We are working in developing this type of tools that are a little bit more forward-looking and can help really employees to work to integrate their learning in the path of growth in their job.
And if I may add to that, as Yvonne mentioned, technology is there for a reason. I think somebody asked me the other day, I forget what was the specific question, but they were basically saying that, when it comes to technology, yes, but I'm not used to using it, or we have a lot of people that are not going to be open to it. But you're going to have this new generation of talent coming through, right? And this is what they know. So whether you like it or not, this is what they know. You need to work with it. And learning, if you ask me, it's going to be even more personalized. It's all going to be, we're already shifting towards, in the consumer world and everything that in the products that companies are developing, it's very individualized and personalized. Training and learning is not going to be different. People want access, they want personalized journeys, they want support when they need it the most, which means that maybe at 10 p.m. at night they're sitting on their phone and they need to chat about a particular work issue. That is when they want to have access to it. They don't want to go to a 2-day training and nobody is going to raise their hand in a 2-day training. If you put a bunch of mid-level managers doing emotional intelligence, again, as an example, which is, it's just so popular these days, right? Nobody's going to raise their hand and say, you know what, I struggle with managing my emotions and empathy. It just doesn't happen. It needs to be individualized, and it needs to be for their level. So and with the assessments and tech and predictable, the tools to predict certain areas of development is what's going to really thrive, because people learn at different levels. People are at different levels when it comes to specific topics, and we cannot just put them all in one room and then expect results. It just doesn't work. So that's going to change. It's already changing, in fact.
I think this will help the people who need to then, look at the return on investment. That was always the question I got as a person who was responsible for that. Yes, but how are we going to measure the return on investment? By having these, I suppose, more predictive methods as well, and an individualized approach, that's going to make that a lot easier, I would imagine as well. We have a quiet audience, but I have one more question. A question in relation to COVID, really, what you think the biggest impact has been on learning in organizations, from your perspective, and that's where you've been functioning, that's where you work. What do you think the biggest impact on learning has been as a result of COVID?
Emma, there are two things that I found interesting about COVID. Is that pre-COVID, as we were an online first company delivering trainings online, it was our share of conversion, our conversion rate was a little bit lower compared to COVID. So when COVID was there, suddenly companies were much more open to say, oh, this is the only possibility in order to train my people, it is online. This is the impact number one. The impact number two is related to the type of topics that became priorities. Before COVID, it was more about communication skills, managerial skills, and so on. And suddenly it became a little bit more centered into skills that are more about managing your time or balancing your time when you are working from home. How do you create productivity habits when you are working from home? How do you manage stress? It has become one of the most popular. And the last point is about leadership in times of change. So how do a leader should adapt when there is so much uncertainty all around, and communicate with the people? What are the type of behaviors and psychological resources that you need when in this type of uncertainty? So the topics have shifted completely. We were almost forgetting about our training course regarding mindful leadership, because nobody wants it before COVID, and suddenly COVID came, and thanks God we were ready with this. We had to do just small modifications in order to provide this type of trainings to corporations.
And I think also so when he mentioned about the psychological factors, and I think that what has also opened the eyes to a lot of employees as well as employers is the fact that, one, we're not upskilling our workforce as we should. So we are not teaching people learning how to learn. We're not teaching people how to take ownership. So, and we can get into a debate whether it's the company's responsibility or not, but they do have some responsibility. There's different response. So we have the responsibility of the individual, but also the organization. And that purpose, when on one of the slides, when we talked about the psychological factors, it also has to do with purpose. So when you are first of all, COVID has made a lot of people realize, do I really want to be doing what I'm doing? I don't know if I like it, or I lost my job, maybe it's time for a change, etc. So that purpose of the individual purpose, meaning, are my values aligned with organizational values? And as leaders, do we know what our people want at the end of the day? Is it just collecting a paycheck? Because it's not. We know this. I mean, it's usually not the top priority for many people. And again, for the incoming generation, it's definitely not on their top priority list. So again, it's understanding the values and purpose, and leading with that purpose. And that if you feel that what you're doing gives you purpose in your organization, and you see how you're contributing, that will eventually make you want to take ownership, make you want to learn and develop yourself to be the best that you can be. And then that in turn benefits the company. But we're not doing that. We're just dumping information on people and thinking they're going to like it, they're going to want to grow, and it doesn't work. Psychological factors are an important piece of, I think, what people have realized out of COVID.
Well, hopefully you've inspired a lot of people here to, to make some improvements if they're not already there. I don't have anything else to ask unless anybody else wants to chip in with any questions before we wrap it up. I think it's been a very informative session for everybody. So it doesn't look like we have any other questions. So I want to thank you both for spending your time here, preparing and obviously delivering as well. We're very fortunate that we've got you as part of the HR forum as contributors on there, of which we actively share your blog. Everything on there seems to get a lot of traction and a lot of interest. So we're very happy for you to be engaged with that. I noticed you've put this slide up. So this information that's here, we will also email through to everybody that's joined the webinar. Just explain what the QR code is for, please.
Okay, guys. So the only thing that you have to do is to open your mobile, take a picture of the mobile, the QR code. It will direct you to some of the examples of the things that we do applying the Agile methodology. You can see, read a little bit, have a little bit more information. You can get in touch with us either via the email or in LinkedIn. We will be more than happy just to have a chat of whatever discussion you want to have.
Okay, great. Well, the QR code, very up to date with technology. I like that. So that's it for now. So thank you very much. I hope everybody has a great weekend. So we have another interesting topic for next week. So just have a look out for that. We'll be putting that out on Sunday. Okay.
Thank you, Emma, for the opportunity. It was lovely to, and your questions were spot on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.